The sun was just beginning to dip behind the hills, casting long, golden shadows across the old family estate. The air smelled faintly of polished wood, lavender, and the lingering scent of my grandfather's cologne, a mix of cedar and something almost metallic. I hadn't been back here in years, not since I left for college, and now, standing in the grand foyer with its sweeping staircase and ornate chandeliers, I felt an odd mix of nostalgia and unease. I'm Alex, a 22-year-old university student with a life that looks ordinary on the surface. I study architecture, spend long hours drafting plans for buildings that never exist, and generally keep to myself. But there's another side to me, a secret I've never shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. I have a fascination with crossdressing, a passion I've explored quietly in the privacy of my apartment. The feel of soft fabrics, the careful application of makeup, the thrill of creating a feminine persona, it's both liberating and terrifying. I've always kept it hidden, convinced that revealing it would destroy my carefully constructed identity. But coming back to my grandfather's house changes everything. He's always been eccentric, with an obsession for testing his family members' limits, for pushing boundaries. And now he's invited me here under the guise of a weekend visit. There's a tension in his invitations, though, a subtle undercurrent that hints this trip won't be just about catching up over tea. I can feel it in the way he phrases things, his sly, knowing smile, the way his eyes lingered on me a little too long when he mentioned this special family tradition. The house itself is imposing but warm, a contrast of rich mahogany furniture, plush carpets, and framed portraits of ancestors who seem to stare down from the walls, judging every misstep. The living room is cozy, with a roaring fireplace and a collection of antique clocks ticking in harmonious dissonance. I try to settle into the familiarity of it, but every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind through the shutters, made me acutely aware of how exposed I felt.
Emma.
I can't stop thinking about her. My girlfriend has always been supportive in ways I never thought anyone could be, yet this secret of mine, the part she doesn't know, makes me nervous. How would she react if she knew I was about to be tested, not by society, but by someone who believes he can mold me? The thought of her judgment lingers, tightening my chest. She's the anchor in my life, the one person whose acceptance I crave. And now, as I step further into the house, I realize that keeping this secret while under my grandfather's scrutiny will be nearly impossible. Grandfather greets me in the hallway, his hand firm on my shoulder, his eyes twinkling with a mix of affection and something unreadable. "Alex," he says, voice low but carrying that unmistakable edge of command, "you've always been a curious one. I think it's time we explore just how adaptable you are." The words send a shiver down my spine. There's a challenge hidden in his tone, one that I can't ignore. As he guides me toward the study, I notice a small stack of clothing on the leather chair, delicate fabrics, soft pastels, and tiny accessories. My heart skips. The test, I realize, has already begun. My grandfather doesn't need to explain. The clothes, the aura of expectation, say it all. He wants to see me not just follow instructions, but transform, physically, emotionally, completely. I hesitate, feeling a wave of anxiety. This isn't just about wearing clothes. It's about surrendering a part of myself, about walking a tightrope between fear and exhilaration. I glance at my reflection in the ornate mirror nearby. Alex stares back at me, nervous, hesitant, aware that the next few hours could change the way I see myself forever. Grandfather gestures toward the outfit. "Take your time," he says softly, almost kindly, yet there's steel beneath the words. "This is a family tradition, Alex. One we've all experienced. The question is, will you embrace it?" I swallow, tension coiling like a spring in my chest. The air feels thick, the room suddenly smaller. I reach for the fabrics, tracing the delicate lace and silky textures with trembling fingers. The thrill mingles with fear. What will happen if I fail? Or worse, what will happen if I succeed? The lines between my masculine self and the persona I'm about to create blur, each heartbeat echoing louder in the quiet room. As I start to undress, preparing to step into the first layer of this imposed transformation, I feel the weight of my grandfather's gaze. Not just a test of appearance, I realize it's a test of identity, of control, of courage. And as the fabric slips over my shoulders, a shiver of both fear and exhilaration runs through me. I am Alex, yes, but soon I will also be something else. Something delicate, feminine, scrutinized, and vulnerable. The first step is always the hardest. My hands tremble as I fasten the small buttons, each one a symbolic act of surrender. I hear the faint click of the door closing behind me, isolating me in the study with my reflection, the outfit, and my grandfather's silent observation. I catch a glimpse of myself, a mixture of apprehension and fascination. The reflection staring back is not just Alex. It is the beginning of a transformation that will challenge everything I thought I knew about myself. And in that quiet, charged moment, I realize this weekend is no longer just a visit. It is a test, a journey, a challenge that will push me to explore the boundaries of fear, identity, and desire. And whether I succeed or fail, I will not leave this house the same person I entered as. The study smelled faintly of old books and polished wood, with sunlight streaming through tall windows that overlooked the sprawling gardens. Alex stood frozen for a moment, hands lightly resting on the delicate fabrics his grandfather had laid out. Each piece seemed to whisper possibilities: soft pastel blouses, skirts that would barely brush the knees, tights that promised both restriction and elegance. Accessories, a small clutch, dainty hairpins, and a pair of ballet flats, lay arranged like an artist's palette, waiting for him to create the final masterpiece, a transformed self. A mixture of anticipation and fear coursed through him. Part of him wanted to run, to grab his regular clothes and bolt from this house forever. Yet another part, the secret part, the one that delighted in the thrill of crossdressing, urged him to explore. His heartbeat accelerated as he considered the forbidden allure of surrendering to his grandfather's test. "Alex," his grandfather's voice broke the silence, smooth yet commanding. "Don't rush. Transformation is about patience as much as appearance." The words were gentle, almost kind, but beneath them, there was unmistakable control. Alex nodded, swallowing hard, aware that this was no longer a casual game. He began with the foundation, a simple camisole, soft against his skin, warming him and making him conscious of every curve of his chest. His hands trembled slightly, tracing the smooth fabric as he adjusted it to fit snugly. Next, the skirt, a soft, flowing piece that felt impossibly light, yet somehow intimidating in its femininity. As he stepped into it, he felt a flicker of exhilaration. The fabric brushed against his legs, making him hyper-aware of every movement. He looked in the mirror, startled by the reflection. It was still Alex, yes, but something had shifted. The hint of vulnerability, the tentative grace. It was a different version of himself, one he rarely allowed to emerge. The tights were next. Sliding them on was an exercise in self-consciousness, each stretch of fabric reminding him of how exposed he now felt. But with each passing second, a strange confidence began to bloom. Alex caught himself swaying slightly in front of the mirror, marveling at the rhythm of movement he had never experienced in his masculine form. Makeup was perhaps the most challenging part. His grandfather handed him a small kit, gently guiding his hands as he applied foundation, blush, and a touch of eyeshadow. The sensation of brushes against his skin, the meticulous strokes, made him feel fragile and beautiful at once. It was intoxicating and terrifying. He had never been observed like this, and yet, here he was, under the meticulous gaze of a man whose approval mattered more than anyone else's. "Look at yourself, Alex," his grandfather said softly, standing behind him. "See the balance, the elegance. You're not just wearing clothes, you're embodying someone else. But remember, it's still you. Always you." The final touches were the hairpins and the flats. Sliding the shoes onto his feet, Alex felt the subtle shift in posture, the tiny adjustments required to walk gracefully. Each step was an exercise in careful control, a rehearsal of femininity he had only imagined in private. And then, the moment came to face himself fully in the mirror. Alex paused, taking in the reflection. The person staring back was delicate, hesitant, yet undeniably beautiful. A wave of emotion hit him, pride mixed with fear, excitement mingled with shame. This was his grandfather's test, yes, but it was also a test of self-acceptance. Could he embrace this part of himself, even under scrutiny? The suspense deepened when his grandfather placed a small necklace around his neck, a symbol, he explained, of the family tradition of transformation. It was a delicate piece, a tiny pendant that caught the light. The gesture felt almost ceremonial, as if Alex had passed through some threshold into a new realm of identity. But the test was far from over. A sudden knock at the door made Alex's heart leap. It was the first reminder that he was not alone, that the possibility of discovery always loomed. He quickly adjusted his skirt, smoothing the fabric, and tried to steady his breathing. His grandfather's eyes twinkled knowingly. Distractions will come. Part of the challenge is maintaining composure despite them. Alone now in the room for a moment, Alex explored his new reflection, noticing details he had never considered. The way the skirt swayed, how the tights accentuated his legs, the softness that makeup brought to his features. He felt a strange dichotomy of vulnerability and empowerment. Each movement, each glance in the mirror reinforced the precariousness of the situation. One misstep could reveal him, one slip could shatter the careful illusion. As he practiced walking gracefully across the polished floor, a quiet voice in his mind whispered, "What would Emma think if she saw me like this? Would she understand the thrill I feel, the liberation, or would she only see embarrassment?" The thought made his stomach twist, but it also fueled the excitement. This was uncharted territory, both emotionally and physically, and the stakes had never been higher. Hours passed in this delicate balancing act. Alex experimented with gestures, posture, and expression, fully immersing himself in the persona his grandfather required. With each passing moment, he felt more confident, more aware of the feminine presence he was cultivating, but the constant threat of discovery kept him tense, alert, and acutely aware of every sound beyond the study door. And then, as evening fell and shadows stretched long across the wooden floors, the suspense escalated further. A sudden sound, a footstep in the hallway, made Alex freeze mid-step. The challenge had evolved from private transformation into a high-stakes game of secrecy. Every glance, every breath, every delicate step now carried weight. He realized that the weekend would be a tightrope walk between fear, thrill, and the intoxicating allure of embracing his feminine side under pressure. It wasn't just about the clothes, the makeup, or the posture anymore. It was about control, identity, and the vulnerability that came with revealing, even temporarily, the deepest layers of himself. And in that moment, Alex understood the essence of his grandfather's test. It was not merely a challenge of appearance, but a profound exploration of self. The soft glow of the study lamps cast elongated shadows across the polished wooden floors, highlighting every deliberate step Alex took as he moved through the room. Each motion, each sway of the skirt, each subtle lift of the chin felt like a performance, but one with stakes far higher than any he had faced before. The weekend had become a labyrinth of vulnerability, secrecy, and temptation. Every sound beyond the study, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of leaves against the window, sent adrenaline racing through his veins. His grandfather's voice broke the tense silence. "Alex, remember, elegance is not just in posture. It is in poise under pressure. You must continue even when distraction comes." Alex nodded, trying to steady his shaking hands. Every fiber of his being screamed with exhilaration, yet fear clung tightly. Then it happened. A knock at the door, sharp, insistent, unexpected. Alex froze mid-step, his reflection in the mirror flickering in panic. He wasn't supposed to be discovered yet. His grandfather raised an eyebrow but said nothing, allowing the suspense to stretch unbearably long. "Alex," a familiar voice called from outside. His heart lurched. It was Emma. She had returned earlier than expected. Panic surged, threatening to undo all the hours of careful transformation. The sound of her voice was intoxicating, but it was also a threat, an imminent revelation that could shatter the fragile balance Alex had worked so hard to maintain. He darted behind the desk, clutching the flowing skirt to his chest, praying the soft fabric would obscure his silhouette. His heart hammered, threatening to betray him, but he forced himself to breathe slowly, to maintain the grace his grandfather demanded. I'll get it, he whispered to himself, though his voice trembled. The door creaked open, and Emma stepped in, eyes narrowing slightly as she surveyed the study. "Grandpa said you'd be practicing," she said, her tone casual but inquisitive. Her gaze drifted downward, lingering faintly on the skirts, the delicate shoes, Alex's carefully constructed feminine form. He held his breath. A slip, a minor misstep in his posture, and the entire illusion could shatter. His grandfather remained silently composed, observing Alex with the patience of a master. Alex's body tensed, but his mind raced. He had to maintain control, to embody this version of himself completely. Failure was not an option. Emma approached the desk, her footsteps deliberate. "I didn't expect this," she murmured, glancing at Alex's reflection in the mirror. Her voice carried a hint of surprise, curiosity, and perhaps judgment. Alex's pulse skyrocketed. Should he reveal himself, explain, or retreat further into his disguise? The sudden tension escalated when the necklace around his neck caught the light, glinting provocatively. Emma's eyes flicked to it, and Alex felt exposed. Every detail, the makeup, the hairpins, the skirt swaying with each tentative movement, was now a potential revelation. His chest tightened with both thrill and fear. "Alex," his grandfather said, voice calm but firm, "remember your lesson. Elegance under scrutiny. Confidence despite fear. Now move." Alex stepped out from behind the desk, each movement deliberate, graceful, controlled. The skirts swayed perfectly, the shoes clicked softly against the wood, and his hands remained steady despite the racing of his heart. Emma watched, transfixed. The air thickened with suspense, every second a test of composure. Then, a second, more insidious obstacle emerged. The study door swung open behind Emma, and a neighbor, unexpected and unannounced, peeked in. "Oh." "I didn't realize someone was." They froze mid-sentence, eyes widening at the sight of Alex in full feminine attire. The room went still, the tension nearly suffocating. Alex felt a wave of panic, but forced himself to remain poised. This was the ultimate test, not just for his transformation, but for his courage under scrutiny. Each breath became a balancing act between fear and self-expression. He realized the thrill, the vulnerability, and the power of being seen, fully and completely, in this delicate form. His grandfather's eyes met his in the mirror, a silent message: embrace it. Alex took a slow step forward, allowing the skirts to swirl naturally, hairpins gleaming under the soft light. He lifted his chin and met Emma's gaze directly. The neighbor's wide eyes faded into the background. In this moment, it was him, Emma, and the essence of the persona he had painstakingly crafted. A small slip. One of the flats shifted slightly, the hem of the skirt caught on the desk. Alex froze, heart hammering. Emma's gaze narrowed in curiosity, yet she didn't react harshly. The suspense was unbearable. One more misstep, and the illusion could crumble completely. And then, in a symbolic act of mastery and submission, Alex adjusted the necklace around his neck, allowing it to rest perfectly. The final touch of the transformation, a moment of both vulnerability and control. He felt a strange exhilaration. He was fully visible, fully feminine, fully exposed. And yet, he was unbroken. The neighbor's murmured apology and retreat offered a temporary reprieve, but the room remained tense. Emma's eyes lingered on him, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and perhaps admiration. The lesson of the weekend, the intricate dance between fear, desire, and self-expression, had reached its peak. Alex stood poised, aware of every eye upon him, every whisper of fabric, every pulse of emotion. In that moment, he understood the duality of his existence, the exhilaration of embracing his feminine persona, the danger of being discovered, and the intoxicating thrill of vulnerability under the watchful eyes of both family and outsiders. The climax was not just a physical challenge, it was an emotional revelation, a testament to courage, identity, and the delicate art of balance. As the evening deepened, Alex felt the weight of anticipation. He had survived the immediate trials, but the suspense was far from over. Every movement, every glance, every thought carried the potential for new obstacles, new revelations, and new thrills. The test was still unfolding, and the weekend promised even more intense challenges ahead. The study was quiet now, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. Alex stood perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in controlled breaths, skirts swaying slightly as he adjusted to his new posture. Emma's eyes remained locked on him, a mixture of awe, disbelief, and something he couldn't quite read. Every second stretched unbearably long, each one feeling like it could shatter the fragile balance he had fought so hard to maintain. "Alex," Emma's voice trembled, a whisper of curiosity and unease. I didn't know you could be like this." Her words hovered between acceptance and shock. Alex's heart raced. Should he explain, apologize, or stay silent? The risk of revealing too much or too little felt immense. Before he could respond, the front door slammed, followed by hurried footsteps echoing through the house. His grandfather's expression remained unreadable, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. Alex's stomach twisted. Who could it be now? The study door creaked as it opened slowly, and a figure stepped in, tall, shadowed, and unfamiliar. The stranger's gaze swept the room, lingering for a heartbeat too long on Alex's feminine form. Alex's mind raced. Every ounce of control, every carefully practiced step, every second of courage now teetered on the brink of disaster. The skirt felt heavier, the shoes tighter, the necklace around his neck like a chain of tension. "Is everything all right here?" the newcomer asked, voice neutral but carrying an edge of suspicion. Emma took a step closer to Alex, instinctively shielding him, but the protective gesture did little to calm the rising panic. Alex felt his hands trembling despite the graceful posture he maintained. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum of imminent exposure. His grandfather finally spoke, voice calm, deliberate, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. "Patience, Alex. Remember, poise in all circumstances. You are exactly where you need to be." Alex forced a small nod, though inside, his mind was a whirlwind of fear, anticipation, and exhilaration. The stranger's gaze flicked between Emma, Alex, and his grandfather, sensing something unspoken, a secret yet untold. Then, in a moment that seemed suspended in time, the stranger's eyes landed fully on Alex. Recognition, or was it suspicion, sparked in their expression. Alex's heart leapt into his throat. Every breath felt impossibly loud. The skirts clung uncomfortably, the heels pinched, the necklace glimmered ominously under the lamplight. "Alex." Emma's whisper was barely audible, but it carried a weight that made his knees weak. The air thickened with unspoken questions. Would his secret be revealed? Could he maintain this carefully constructed persona under scrutiny? What would happen if the truth spilled out now, in this fragile moment of vulnerability? Time seemed to pause. Alex's eyes darted toward the mirror, catching his reflection, an image of elegance, fragility, and tension all wrapped in one. The skirt swayed, the heels gleamed, the makeup caught the light perfectly. Yet behind that poised exterior, his heart thundered with uncertainty. The stranger took a deliberate step forward, the sound of their shoes against the wooden floor echoing like a countdown. Emma's hand tightened slightly around Alex's arm, a silent signal of both support and shared anxiety. Alex's grandfather remained calm, yet his eyes hinted at a challenge, a test yet unfinished. "Do you know something?" the stranger asked finally, voice edged with curiosity and suspicion. Alex froze, unsure whether to respond or retreat further into his persona. Every instinct screamed in contradiction. Flee, explain, perform, hide. The skirts felt like both armor and trap, the heels like both support and burden, the necklace like a tether to a fragile identity. And then the moment stretched impossibly longer. The stranger's gaze locked on Alex, Emma's eyes pleading for an explanation, the grandfather silently urging patience, and Alex felt the weight of every decision yet to come pressing down on him. The room was still. Breath hung in the air. Hearts pounded. The suspense was unbearable. Would Alex's secret survive the intrusion? Would he remain the poised, feminine grandchild he had carefully crafted, or would everything unravel in this single moment? And then, the screen of possibility cut to black. End of episode, cliffhanger. Call to action. Speech balloon, what would you do if you were in Alex's position? Should he reveal the truth, maintain the disguise, or find a clever way to deflect suspicion? Comment your theories below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see how Alex's suspenseful journey continues in the next episode.